Following the methodology from our best-selling book, The Resilient Shield, we are delighted to announce the inaugural Resilience Retreat, which will occur in far north Queensland between Thursday the 27th of October and Sunday the 30th of October.
The whole point of the retreat is to give you the ability to build your shield, to develop your knowledge and understanding of the key principles related to resilience, to enhance your toolkit and to optimise your performance.
Come and be part of an incredible group of humans that are like-minded, meet our facilitators and motivational speakers. To find out more, email us at retreat@resilientshield.com. Hope to see you there.
Welcome to the Unforgiving 60 with your hosts, Ben Pronk and Tim Curtis. As two ex-SAS guys armed with MBAs, Ben and Tim seek out people leading lives less ordinary and talk with them about how they fill their unforgiving minutes and what helps them go, always, a little further. Like intellectual bowerbirds, we aim to collect shiny little objects of knowledge that we think can help build better humans.
Welcome to the Unforgiving 60 podcast. I'm Tim Curtis with my co-host Ben Pronk. Ben, how are you?
I'm good, Tim. How are you?
Very well. A word association. Weed, pot, reefer, grass, dope, ganja, hash. All of these things conjure in your brain illicit use. But what about licit use?
When you say them like that.
But we're actually going to talk to Dr. Michael Mumford, who is prescribing cannabis and cannabinoids as an alternative to traditional drugs to get people off the cycle of addiction on things like opiates.
Yeah, and as we've covered in a couple of previous episodes, clearly from a military perspective, there's a lot of people hurting, a lot of people with PTSD, a lot of people with issues as a result of their service. And we've spoken to some amazing people like Dr. Richard Magdengard about some of the different and it seems from the evidence that's starting to accrue some of the more effective methods of treating these kind of conditions. And certainly one of the interesting ones is the use of medicinal marijuana and cannabinoids. Yeah,
and the science is out there. Michael has got a research project with the University of Wollongong. We'll touch on that. Naturally, we'll talk about the problems that prescribed cannabinoids solve and also if there is a downside risk and why in Australia have we been so slow to the party on medicinal cannabis.
Yeah, we'll also talk about his work pioneering the Veterans Access Scheme, which I think is really interesting because not only is he looking at the treatment of the particular condition, but also looking at trying to streamline some of the bureaucracy that can be an added complication for a lot of veterans seeking help.
And what makes the veteran demographic different that they need a Veterans Access Scheme? That's important also to ponder.
And I think, wider than just the veteran community, we're going to talk a lot about the kind of science behind these kind of treatments for all sorts of things, including chronic pain and depression and anxiety, so not just veteran-specific sort of applications.
Let's get on with the show.
Have you been to India? 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 Well, you better get some of it, India. Have you been to India? There's shit there will blow your mind.
Well, welcome to the Unforgiving 60 podcast. I'm Tim Curtis, as always, with my co-host Ben Pronk. Welcome, Ben.
G'day, Tim.
What do you know about opioids, cannabis, and the benefits, medicinal benefits?
Yeah, not much. I led a very sheltered little sort of upbringing. I was not dabbling in that sort of stuff as a lot of people did at high school. Joined the army and was a very good boy throughout.
I'm talking medicinal benefits.
Yeah, no, likewise none.
Well, on today's show, we've got Dr. Michael Mumford. Welcome, Michael.
Welcome, and thank you very much for having me on the show.
And we are going to explore that very theme. Michael, before we get to that, can you talk a little bit about your upbringing and what got you to where you are now?
Certainly. So I was Wagga born and bred. Grew up in Wagga, family, three brothers. Didn't have much to do with the military as in our close family. Obviously, a little bit distant. We did have some sort of military connections.
Surely, as a teenager, you got in a punch up at the RE or the Cry or whatever the local pub is in Wagga.
There was plenty of pubs in Wagga, and there was obviously the very big military component there with Kapuka and the RAF base. But through school, obviously, to get out of Wagga, there was not many avenues. So it was sort of either be recruited into places like the military or ADFA, or go to like BHP for scholarships. So I took the military option, went through ADFA, and originally joined the engineers and had a very interesting career through the engineer pathway. And then obviously joined or decided to transfer to medicine. And that's where we sort of are now. So
could you talk to the sort of military medicine process? I think a lot of our listeners would be interested. Clearly, my brother did it or became a doctor through the army, but did it kind of as a postgrad and then straight in. But from a serving perspective, can you tell us about the process of going from being an engineer to being a doctor?
Yeah. So obviously, going through school, had no interest in medicine. Didn't really know what I wanted to do, and it wasn't until in the military, was involved with the engineers, and through that I was lucky enough to be able to have some very, I think, lucky postings, and had very good roles. So I was up in Darwin, went to Timor, and came down to Sydney, and was with the Incident Response Regiment, and got to work with the Special Operations, went overseas to Afghanistan. And that was probably where I really got sort of interested and involved in the whole medicine thing. And so from there, coming back from what I'd say is probably one of the highlights of my army career, came back to Australia and had that sort of turning point as to what way I was going to go moving forward. And that's when I decided to try or throw my hat in the ring for an application into get into a school of medicine, passed the exams, got accepted to one of the universities, and then got support through the military to go through and study, which was very good.
Oh, that's awesome. And can you tell us a bit about the infamous GAMSAT? That's as I understand, the entrance exam. I did a GMAT, a kind of business equivalent for my MBA, and I think I've still got PTSD from that. That was an extremely, I thought, an excellent process for screening what they were trying to screen for, but a very difficult process to sort of get up to. Was GAMSAT a pretty similar sort of trial for you, Mike?
GAMSAT was an interesting process, being that I'd come back from overseas, had that moment of clarity of I'll try this, and had sort of looked into it a little bit, realised there was sort of a series of exams involved in it, had a look at a practice exam and thought I'll go to this. And it wasn't until I was actually there that many people were sitting there with very, very thick textbooks and sort of going through things and telling me that this was their third or fourth attempt. And it was like, not really sure what I've got myself in for here. So it was a very interesting day, shall I say. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a similar thing. I did that practice gym. I literally thought, how hard could this be? And turns out very hard is the answer. It was a bucket of cold water over my head, but a good catalyst to get studying.
Yeah, it was a bit of a rude shock. But anyway, we got through it, so that was good.
How did you enjoy the process of studying medicine?
Look, I quite enjoyed it. I went through the Wollongong University program, and it was very much a practical way of studying. And I think being a little bit older, having sort of been out of uni for a while, I found that quite a good way of doing it. So it wasn't all just textbooks and sitting in front of lectures and things. It was actually getting out into the community, spending time in the general practice role, spending a year in the hospital system as well. So it was very, very practical. And I think I probably learned better that way. And I think that suited my learning skills and ability.
And then with a stethoscope around your neck, how did you find being a regimental medical officer, a medical officer in general, and probably a segue potentially, what was the medical system not delivering that's piqued your interest into what you're doing now?
So my return to medicine in the military was a bit of an interesting one. I think I'd had a very good, had some really good aspects in my engineering career. I'd had this gap of about 6 years where I'd sort of left, being a civilian for that period of time, and then walking back into returning to the military, I suppose. It was interesting because most of the other colleagues who I'd sort of rejoined at that point were fresh off the street. So they were sort of captains and lieutenants and things. I was at the point where I was going to be promoted in a regimental officer position, as in before I left. So I'd done everything up to, all the promotions for major. Coming back in, I had to return to learning what a troop was, all the different ranks. And that was a bit sort of, I guess, a bit frustrating, that there was no sort of recognition for what we'd done before. It was very much, this is your new role, this is what you are, you know nothing, you're back at the bottom. And that was a bit frustrating. It was, I guess I wanted to return to where I'd been in the military, as in I'd worked in the Special Forces. They're very dedicated people. They know what they're doing, very job focused, and that's where I wanted to be. And I guess one of the things I'd say is we're probably very pigeonholed, that this is where you are. You have to go through all these steps. There's no recognition of anything you've done, anything else. And I guess that was quite a frustrating process for me. And when, I guess going sort of back a little bit, when I was in RMC, I was lucky enough to have a sort of close family friend was the Vice Chief of Defence Force at that time. I remember sitting with him, and this is one of the big things I remember was he sort of, when we're talking about careers and things, and he said, one of the things you'll always come back to is you'll know when it's time, and don't ever overstay your welcome. And I thought, at the time, I didn't really think too much of it, but getting back in and going through some of the things I was going through there, that's one of the things that I came back to, that it was time and I'd probably overstayed my welcome. And that's when I departed. And I guess I thought I could do more in the military, as in I thought I could bring some of my experience and different things like that. And I don't think that was going to be allowed. And I think once I got out, I think I was a bit annoyed and a bit upset about that. And I sort of distanced myself from the military and from military people. And it's only after a period of time, I started seeing one or two, and they were actually ex-soldiers of mine. So going all the way back to when I was an engineer, original troop commander. So some very young people, they were very active, and they'd since sort of progressed through their careers as well. And some of them had actually ended up in the Special Forces, and they were pretty broken. And seeing them was probably the turning point, which was good. And being able to help them was good. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. And it's interesting your point about not overstaying your welcome. I think a number of the ex-defence people I speak to, there is that sweet spot. And I don't know what's worse, people who sort of get out for whatever reason before they're ready, before they've scratched that itch from the military side, or the people who hang on after that point where they've, might have been better off leaving. But yeah, in terms of helping people, which is clearly what you're all about, both from the medical perspective and also from the wider aspects. How did you get into the role looking at sort of medicinal applications of opioids and cannabinoids as a means of doing that? What sort of piqued your interest in there?
Yeah, so I work down in Dapto, so down just south of Wollongong. Lot of people who are on long wait lists for operations and things like that. My apologies, the dog is.
That sounds like a big dog. What sort of dog is that?
It's a German Shorthaired pointer.
Okay.
So it's she wants to go for a run because I'm home. It's time to go. So there's a lot of people who were, chronic pain, chronic conditions, huge amounts of opiates, huge amounts of sort of painkillers, Valiums, the benzodiazepines, all the different things, and probably seeing more of the veterans coming through and what they were discharged with. And I think the Royal Commission has sort of mentioned some of these things, the cocktails that people are on, and sort of trying to work out what you could do with them. Like, you'd ring up and get these huge authority scripts for, huge numbers of endones, Palexias, Targens, like huge numbers, and it'd just be, yep, no worries, and it'd just be handed to them, and you'd think these people, and this is where I've seen, the ones that I used to work with that were sort of happy, young, fit people, and they just looked like zombies. Yeah, and sort of looking for the alternate or what we could do. So that's when I started looking into it. And back in the day, so back a couple of years ago, it was a very sort of tricky process. There was a lot to it, time consuming. It had to go through sort of New South Wales Health and sort of the TGA. So several levels of approval. So it could take 3 or 4 weeks to get someone onto the cannabis. But seeing the results was good. And so the more we sort of saw these results and having, the physios comment or other specialists comment that this person was starting to really change and be more involved in different things, getting better results out of the physios, and even family members saying that they were starting to be sort of more of a human again, back to what they used to be, was really good to see.
So the jury's been out on medicinal cannabis in a number of countries, including in North America. Why have we been so slow on it if the values are very clear, the value of prescribing it's very clear? Is it just the bureaucracy, Michael?
Look, I think it's people's perceptions that it's always been that street drug, or it's been that illegal substance. Probably the lack of understanding, or people's perception seeing people as, that stoner or that person who's just using it recreational and not doing anything. Whereas when we can actually manage it properly and use it where it's sort of in a guided stepwise process to try and achieve something, I think it can be used quite well. So I think it's trying to change that perception of a lot of people. We always sort of talk to different doctors or people, and it's always, well, there's no evidence, or it's a tricky process, or it's something like that. So it's trying to build that body of evidence and start using it, and that's where we're doing some work with the University of Wollongong, and actually trying to quantify things and actually trying to say, okay, this is what we've done, this is how we're doing it. So we've done some initial research that's just finished, which is quite good. And those results are, I think, quite good.
How does what you prescribe differ from street weed?
You sounded very old when you said street weed. I don't think that's what the kids are calling it.
Ganja.
I guess one is it's illegal to buy on the street, and it's legal for us to prescribe. 2, it's very heavily regulated, so we know it's a clean product. So we know that there's each time we buy the product or each time someone gets the product, it's going to be the same. So there's that sort of regulatory process around it. There's nothing added to it. There's nothing, that you're going to get a good bag, a bad bag, anything like that. It's going to be exactly the same.
Lawn clippings and oregano or anything.
some black tea leaves.
Nothing like that. No, it's good. But I think the best part is you can get different bits to it. So depending on what you're trying to do, a lot of the things are oils, but medicinally, you can take things out of it. You can sort of say, okay, I only want this or this percentage, or you can change what you're looking for depending on what you're trying to treat. And that's probably the best part of it, is that there's so many different conditions that they say it can assist, and it's not going to be the magic solution for everyone. But for people at the end of the road who've tried just about everything and they're trying to look for some sort of solution to help them, it can, for some of those people, be quite good.
Now, I'm going to caveat my next question with the fact you are talking to a very lay audience here in Tim and I.
Bob Marley sitting across the table from me.
But can you talk us through the science? Like, how does this work? Are we talking THC? Are we talking CBD? I don't even know what those acronyms stand for. But what are the sort of bits, and how does the neurochemistry work? You said there's a range of different applications that you can use it for. What sort of things can it do to help people from a medicinal sense? Yeah,
so the TGA is approved. There's about 100 different conditions that they say we can prescribe it for, and so they range for everything from chronic pain to anxiety to seizures to migraines to there's a whole lot of different things. I guess the other caveat I'll put on it is it doesn't work for everyone. So it's not something that is a magic solution. And that's one of the big things, that when people do come and talk to us, they think that they're here, it's going to work. And so, yes, it does work for a lot of people, but it doesn't work for everyone. A couple of things in it would be things like the costs and the legalities around it. So I can sort of touch base on those in a minute. It's basically a natural way of supplementing sort of the messenger systems within the human body. So it's, all the synthetic drugs are trying to sort of achieve something within the body, some sort of, increase a messenger system, sort of block a messenger system, do something like that. So this is a natural form where we're trying to not smoke it and breathe it centrally so we can get a euphoric effect from it. We're trying to use and you said before, the CBDs and the THCs, they're the two main active ingredients, but there's a whole range of other components within the plant that they're doing research on, but these are the two major ones you get. And they're trying to sort of upregulate those systems so that where they say the body is in deficiency or is deficient in certain things, we can supplement it with a natural product to try and improve those messenger systems, improve pain management, improve depression and anxiety and all those different things.
And so does it have an effect on things? Like, my understanding is that the dopamine type system is very much geared towards motivation and getting sort of back into things. And then some of the feel-good systems, the serotonins and even the oxytocins. Are we talking those kind of sort of system?
Yes, those sort of systems is where we're trying to do. So it depends, if we're using, the THCs or the CBDs, it's depending on what we're trying to target. But the main one is that it's, I guess we're trying to say that we're able to achieve some of those things through the different combinations. So the CBD is sort of the milder aspect, I suppose you'd say. So it's meant to be better for sort of the anxiety, the anti-inflammatory aspects. It's not meant to be sedative, where THC is the stronger, or it's the psychoactive component. It is sort of better for the pain management. It's better for if we're trying to improve sleep quality and things. So people with PTSD, that's a better option. But it's I guess the big one is the whole legalities and the driving ability and things like that, which has to come into it. Whereas a lot of other medications, they probably make you more sedated, but we don't test them on a roadside drug test. So it's sort of, trying to work out which way we can go and who's able to do, who we're able to treat with what.
What's the downside? What's the risk of taking medicinal marijuana?
In terms of addiction, I suppose a lot of people sort of talk about, it seems to be a lot lower, or it is a lot lower down the addiction sort of tree than some of the opiates and things. We find it quite safe for people to start and stop, whereas if people are on, say Valiums or different things every day of the week, the addiction or to start and stop that medication is very problematic. You can go into withdrawals and things. The medicinal cannabis is a lot safer in higher doses, as in overdose and things like that. It doesn't shut down the respiratory system like some of the other medications, and so it does. It's a lot safer in that respect, being a more natural sort of product.
So it is possible to overdose?
Look, most, if you worked in ED or things like that, most people have had too much cannabis. They're very sick. They vomit quite a lot. They feel very sorry for themselves, but you don't see too many people who, go too much further than that. Like it's unlike, people who have too m目Valiums or too many endones, like it's pretty much a sort of terminal event. Too much medicinal cannabis or too much cannabis even, it'll make you feel pretty unwell, but that's about it. So.
Well, I'm interested if you've looked also at some of the broader range of drugs, of currently illegal drugs, and in particular the hallucinogenics. Tim and I both read and enjoyed Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind, and found that a very interesting sort of plot arc in terms of the original applications and medicinal benefits of these being studied in the 60s, and then a real sort of counter-narrative coming out societally, which has left a legacy to this day, and we're only just discovering potentially some of the benefits of drugs like psilocybin and even MDMA for these kind of applications. Have you looked at those or done sort of peripheral reviews of that sort of stuff?
I've looked a little bit around the edges. I guess I can see the benefit in a lot of those medications, and I know there's a lot of research and things coming out of the States, especially in veterans, and they seem to be doing some very good work. For me, I think I'm like you, that didn't touch drugs through school, went into the military. It was very much a zero tolerance policy, all those different things. I've been able to sort of go, okay, I'll step towards the medicinal cannabis, and I think that's a bit of a step to the right. I think at this point in time, I don't have the capacity or the ability to step that little bit further. I think that's another step to the other side. I can see that it's probably going to be quite beneficial, but for me, I've not sort of looked into prescribing it, do anything like that at this point in time.
What's the perception of your medical peers on you prescribing cannabinoids? Is there resistance amongst the medical community or reluctance?
Look, there is, and I guess that's one of the things we're doing at the moment is we've got a program called the Veteran Access Scheme, which I can talk about in a little bit. Part of that program is we're trying to assist veterans onto medicinal cannabis, but we're trying to use or help educate the veterans their own GP. So we're trying to prevent fragmented care, trying to get their care looked after by their normal GP, and encourage, if the veteran wants to use medicinal cannabis, try and assist them to get onto that process. and assist their normal GP to manage that. A lot of people, or a lot of the GPs are interested. They want to know how it's benefiting them, or be involved in sort of hearing or how we're recommending to deprescribe different medications with them, but they are not wanting to be the prescriber. So they're sort of interested but cautious. A lot of them are, until there's more evidence, or until it's more widely accepted, or until others do it, it sort of seems a little bit of a step for them. And I think the perception is changing, but I think there's still a way to move forward, as in still time to sort of get more people across the line.
And you mentioned before that part of what you're doing is trying to get that sort of research base and those peer-reviewed studies. Could you talk to the project you're working on with the University of Wollongong on this?
Yeah, so we're working with the School of Medicine and some of the medical students there, and the research that we're doing. So we've been able to look at the deprescribing of opiates, benzos and antidepressants within a cohort of people that we've got on medicinal cannabis. So the research, they've just sort of completed and given us the draft forms of it, but they basically took about 500 patients, and they were sort of looking for, there was some big sort of exclusion criteria in there, but basically trying to pick the ones that are sort of chronic pain, on opiates, on Valiums, antidepressants at the start, and then look at several indicators, so quality of life indicators, pain scores, the medications that they're on at the start, the reasons why they were on it, and then after a period of time, what medications they were then on, what they deemed their quality of life, pain scores and things like that were. And it's been it's quite interesting to watch. So I can see it when I talk to the patients, sort of anecdotally, I can see that they appear better, they sound better, they're saying they sleep better. But to actually quantify it and then sort of say, okay, over that group, the pain scores on average have gone down several points. So they're talking about opiate use has dropped between 50 and 90%. The benzodiazepine usage, about 1/3 of them have stopped totally, and another 1/3 have reduced their doses. And the pain scores have typically dropped 3 points, and the quality of life indicators again have dropped 1 to 3 points. Interestingly, though, when we look at the cohort that I had, as in from where we are, they say typically chronic pain is in the older adults, so sort of around the 60 to 70 age would be the typical in most research papers that they looked at. Because there's a large portion of veterans that I see, the age group or the age bracket was very much skewed to the lower. So they said the average age was actually 40 to 49 years in our group. But I think, we've got a large number of veterans that are unfortunately very young and very broken.
Mm. But even just that first result, I mean, looking at the kind of ongoing opiate crisis in the States and as I understand, probably not a dissimilar situation in Australia, albeit to a smaller scale. I mean, getting people off those kind of drugs, those kind of pain relief medications, even that in itself must be a positive sort of outcome of this.
Yeah, well, I think it's obviously it's a small scale study. It's a low grade, so it's a retrospective study, and we're looking at extending it and improving the study as we move forward to try and improve the level of evidence that we're gaining from it. But you're 100% right. The number of people on high doses, large volumes of opiates and Valiums and things, there is that pressure there from the government, from different bodies to actually try and deprescribe or remove those medications. There's always you're forever getting the reports of this is what you prescribe. The average doctor in this area prescribes this much. Therefore, please be aware of your prescribing habits and things like that. So we're always getting those little gentle reminders that we should be watching what we prescribe and things. And I think this is becoming a more interesting way to deal with these chronic conditions, the chronic pains. You can see by, I think, the rhetoric that is around some of the big pharma who are starting to get involved in medicinal cannabis, that there is a very big shift towards this, I think, and I think it's going to increase over the next couple of years.
Well, why don't you just wait here at the bar while I go outside and go around the corner and get our car? We'll leave this old town behind, buy some beers, right down south till dawn. Or we can cruise down along the coast, maybe park down by the swell. Tune in to the big US radio, 18 million. The party's gone too far this time.
Turning our attention to the Veteran Access Scheme, why is this important specifically in the veterans demographic?
I think the veteran community is a very vulnerable group. A lot of them are, they've been medically discharged from their job. They're quite young. A lot of them are on pensions. They're not working. The DVA process, while it is there to support the veterans, it takes time to get people onto different things. And so what we've found over the years, or over what I've been doing, is it's very tricky to get people, especially for medicinal cannabis. It's not just to ring them up and get them onto this process. It does take time, and there's several hurdles along the way. So whereas if I saw either of you, I'm an authorised prescriber, which means I could prescribe you certain things today, and you could walk down to the pharmacy. As long as they had them there, you could pick them up. For a veteran, it can take sort of 2 to 3 months to jump them through the different hoops that they need. And so the Veteran Access Scheme is a group of industry bodies have got together and basically sought to try and give them compassionate access to a limited amount of medicinal cannabis while they're stepping through this process. So we've been quite lucky with one of the other groups to work with is a medicinal cannabis company, Provocatus, and one of the largest growers, medicinal and first medicinal license in Australia, Can Group. And we've also using or partnering with Omni, who's providing the governance. Obviously, it's S8 drugs and things that we're dealing with. So they're looking after the governance for us to make sure the oversight is there. But basically, we're trying to support those veterans and get them started. So, some of them have just been discharged from, say, a mental health facility, or they're in chronic pain waiting for support. And so we're trying to get them onto the support before we can get them through the hurdles for DVA.
And how does one get into the scheme, Michael?
Yep. So there's several different ways. So either on our site from work, so we've got the Southern Cross Cannabis Clinic, or through the Provocatus website. So it's theprovocatus.com. There's a form there for veterans, and they can click on that. There's two parts. So one for the patient, they can print that form and take it to their doctor, and it can sort of assist their doctor in working out how to get them onto the scheme. Or there's for the doctor can log in there as well, and they can put people onto the program. But if they need any support, then they ring the Provocatus hotline there, and they can assist them or guide them through where to go and who to see in their area. And that's the concept, is we're trying to link people to their normal GP or someone in their area, so that we're not creating fragmented care. There's been a lot of veterans who've tried a lot of these bigger clinics, paid an awful lot of money to go there, and haven't had the success of getting through to DVA. And so we're trying to provide that smoother process, or that education process behind the scenes as well, to try and make sure that they can get there.
Awesome. And look, we'll make links to all of those sites that you mentioned in our show notes. So if people are interested or feel that this could be applicable for them, they can certainly jump through that. Michael, what's next for you in this area? And I guess more broadly, what do you hope to see in terms of these sort of drugs as a potential treatment?
Yeah. What's happening for us? Well, we're very, very excited about how the Veteran Access Scheme is going and the people we're working with. We're looking forward to finding more doctors who are very supportive of this. So if there are any doctors who would like us to show them how to do it, or would like to be involved in this in the local area, or they look after veterans, we would love to chat to you, and we can sort of support you through that. You don't have to be a medicinal cannabis prescriber. We can assist you with all of that. We're obviously trying to grow that body of research. And again, we're sort of looking to the next part of the research. Obviously, time and money is a big thing for us, as in, where so everyone gets to their capacity as to what they can do. So we're looking at people who are interested in sort of supporting that, helping with research, particularly in the veteran space. I think that's probably an area where that's probably one of our passions. And I think an area that we can actually really support. And I think there's a lot of people there, a lot of veterans who would benefit from things like this. And so that's the area where we're going. Obviously, we've seen the benefits of the medicinal cannabis. And probably over the years, we've used lots of different companies and lots of different products. So we've actually, there's a group of veterans who we've got together to try and support this in a bigger way, in the way of we're now looking into where we are in the medicinal cannabis manufacturing area. And so we're sort of growing that, and through that we hope to further the research and things like that as well. So that's where we're sort of heading, and doing all my normal GP stuff, and being a dad and doing all that stuff as well. So that's
and a dog owner.
Yeah, and walking your dog.
Yeah, plenty of runs. We do that very early in the morning, drop the kids at swimming, go for a run, all sorts of stuff. So trying to keep fit.
The name of the company is interesting, Provocatus, and on the website it says challenged, provoked. Is that necessary, to challenge and provoke?
It's more, Provocatus is thought-provoking and challenging. I think medicinal cannabis itself is a very, very, very thought-provoking thing, or it's not sort of the mainstream. And I think that's the thing we're trying to say, is it's a thought-provoking, it's something that it's not the mainstream thing. You've got to really think about it. It's got to be something that is not first line, but it's out there, and to for those that want to look into it, it's there.
Right, switching topics slightly, you talked about being a father and a GP and a dog owner. What do you do for you?
That's always an interesting thing. I guess one of the big things we've done is all of what we do is my wife is heavily involved in what we do. So Casey, my wife, she's the practice manager. She's on the board with myself in the medicinal cannabis company, very much behind the Veteran Access Scheme. It means that for us, we've got to be very making sure we've got time for us, making sure that we work together, we live together, we do everything together, the kids, dropping kids around at sport and things. It's a big one. One of the big things we've learned is we've got to have that time away from everything. And so that's very hard to do these days with emails come to your pocket and your phone. They'll do that 24 hours a day. You're always thinking about work. So not only the general practice, but the cannabis stuff and the Veteran Access Scheme. So all these different things. We always make sure that as I said, we're dropping kids off at pools at ridiculous hours in the morning. Always make sure that I've got time for a run. Casey goes to, Pilates in the gym and things like that. So we've got that fitness time. Probably one of the most interesting things, I think, when you say, what about, what do we do? In our hectic sort of morning life, we're obviously up very early. We always have a coffee together in bed at 4:20 in the morning while we're waiting for the kids to get up. Then after we've picked up the kids, we always sit down and have breakfast together. So all four of us sit down and we have our breakfast, and then the madness continues. So it's sort of this moment of pause in our life, which is good.
I love that.
Do you get any time in the afternoon and evenings to do something similar?
Usually I'm getting home very late, and it's more trying to get the kids packed and ready because they should be in bed because they're going to get up early. So it's helping in that frantic pack up, and then it's discuss a couple of things from the day, and that's it.
Yeah, we know that feeling. I tend to find if I don't get it done before work, it just does not get done in my own, what do I do for me?
There's always that list of it'll get done tomorrow or next week or next month.
Well, Michael, it's great to hear you're carving out those little oases of calm in what's clearly a really busy and from our perspective, it sounds a very productive life. Thank you very much for sharing your time, for sharing your story and your wisdom. And we certainly look forward to tracking how things progress in this area, because it sounds like you're doing a lot of good for a lot of people.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Now to the debrief. We try to go always a little further in this podcast and greatly appreciate your input. Please let us know your feedback, the good, the bad, or the ugly. Also, if you know someone who is living a life less ordinary, we'd love to hear about them. You can get in touch at debrief@unforgiving60.com. That's debrief@unforgiving60.com. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please tell your friends and write a review for us on Apple Podcasts. Until next episode, keep filling your unforgiving minutes with 60 seconds worth of distance run. See you next time on the Unforgiving 60.
Coming to my bedroom.